And I'm happy to introduce the panelists on our next panel, Soft Landing Programs in New York State, Opportunities for Cross-Border Innovation and Business Growth. When I was working on our Soft Landing grant, I researched intensively benchmarking experiences throughout the United States and also in New York State. And I was happy, first of all, to discover Maria Blecher, who actually also got 1.6 million grant a year before we got it from EDA. And Maria is the founding director of Innovation Lab at Yeshiva University. So she's one of our panelists today. Then Charles Lorum, somebody mentioned, yes, John, you mentioned, the Nordic Spark, which is part of SUNY Stony Brook, right? And Charles is the executive director at Nordic Innovation House, New York, that is helping develop this Nordic Spark soft landing program. And we'll discuss this in just a second. And then Mark Alessi started actually his soft landing program a little bit later, but almost at one and the same time, which is the International Soft Landing Startup Exchange Program at the Business Incubator Association of New York State. And I invited him because this is a different experience, a different program. And then I have most recently discovered another soft landing program, which is Access New York, and Kirsty Barani, she's the director of this program. It is developed by a venture capital fund, the Australian Venture Capital Fund, Scale Facilitation. So what we have here today is a diversity of institutional drivers of this variety of soft landing programs. And I have to emphasize that I couldn't find any other programs. Maybe there are a few in New York City, but that's it. And I'm a researcher by education, so I research intensively. So here is the cream of the soft landing world in New York State. And I'm happy now to go through this panel and see what other experiences exist, like to compare and contrast different soft landing experiences and have a discussion about what works, what doesn't work, what needs to be changed, and so on. Now, with all this introduction, okay, I would like probably to ask each one of you to give a very brief introduction of your programs, how they started, why they started. Okay.
By order?
Okay. Maria.
No, Maria. So first of all, Elena, thank you so much for putting this together. And yeah, I'll use the mic. Dr. Maria Blecher, the founding director of the YU Innovation Lab. So the YU Innovation Lab was established with the idea of providing a launching pad for early stage Israeli startups here in New York. So as Yeshiva University, we have deep institutional connections with the state of Israel. You can tell by my accent, I'm an Israeli, so kind of adding to that direction. And so the entire idea was, Israel is branded as the startup nation. We are located here in New York, and the idea was, okay, how we're bringing those startups to enter the American market, what are their needs, what we can provide them as an institution, given our main asset, which is our students and faculty and access to the New York ecosystem. So that's how we started. Then with a great support from the EDA, we were able to expand the program. So we started as a pilot. We received a very generous support. Thank you, Ed, here in the audience. And we received the grant actually in spring 2020. And we all know what happened. So we received the email. We were very happy. We were planning on bringing the startups in, and then COVID happened. So we reshuffled the plan. Maybe I'll address that slightly later. But we're up and running. We run 2 cohorts per year. Overall, anywhere between 18 to 22 startups are going through our program. They work with our students and faculty on specific projects, typically along the lines of business discovery, customer discovery, market research, communication, all the parts that are kind of very, very important for the Israeli startups. Very good at tech. Navigating the American business landscape and communication is more tricky, so that's where we step in.
Hi, I'm Mark Alessi. I'm with the Business Incubator Association for New York State. We're a trade association of 115 incubators and accelerators across New York State that house and mentor 3,000 startups collectively every year. And our programming is more geared towards our members who are incubator managers or accelerator managers. But the only times that we touch companies, like in a soft landings program, is when our members collectively start asking us to do something at a macro level that helps them all. So we have a number of members that have soft landing programs. There's a number of them here in New York City. What we found, it was originally NYU that had a program that they had, I think, 300 applications, and they ended up picking 8 companies. And the gentleman that ran that program at the time was a gentleman named Steve Kayun. And Steve calls me, he's like, doesn't mean there wasn't 80 or 90 amazing companies. They just weren't a fit for NYU. And so it would make sense if we all together marketed everybody's soft landings programs, but had an opportunity for companies that, like what Pierre had said, if it's not a fit for the Southern Tier, it doesn't mean it's not a fit for New York. So we have launched a program. We had a similar experience. We launched it February of 2020. So we canceled that cohort. We had our first cohort in 2021. In our program, we call it an exchange because, one, we're working with the foreign consulate economic development offices, and we're working with some of our counterparts in other countries. So it's not just companies coming here, although we haven't done this cohort yet. We're about to put out a call for applications to send some of the companies here in New York for introductions in other parts of the world, starting in Europe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kirsty Barani. I'm the program lead for Access New York as part of Scale Facilitation. Scale Facilitation is an investment group founded by Dave Collard. He's an ex-PwC partner. But the way we like to see our fund is as a company that builds companies. So our approach is very founder-centric with a global approach. So we have investments as large as multi-billion infrastructure projects, including battery, including the C4V technology. We're creating 2 gigafactories, one in Australia, and recently we just acquired British Volt, and we're using the same technology there. We're involved in magnets and microprocessors. But I'm here because Dave Collard has a very much interest in getting innovation at the start with the founders, with investors, and giving them the necessary resources to become real successful ventures. So he created Access New York to support those initiatives. I started this program with him about 6 months ago, so it's fairly recent. We are looking to onboard the first 6 companies in the next 6 months. We already have hundreds of applications from all over the world, and we have been in the process of not only figuring out who are fabulous founders and who have fabulous technology. We have found that across the globe, but also we look to find those that we can accelerate in the next 24 months. And we do that not only by providing our services or our advice and our mentoring, but we also have very good relationships with governments and corporations. So I was very, very happy to see the U.S. Commercial Service talking at the beginning of the session, because some people listen to this word and say, oh, another government representative. I am firsthand beneficiary of that. I work very closely, for example, with the U.S. Commercial Service in Australia. We have an extraordinary relationship. What they say about supporting small business is absolutely true. And actually Select USA in 2 weeks is one of the examples. I'm a mentor for women in tech and also a judge in their panels. So what I'm trying to express is we are a very different kind of investor. We really are here to support innovation and walk them through the whole innovation process.
Great. My name is Charles Loram, representing Nordic Innovation House here in New York. Nordic Innovation House was started as a collaboration between the 5 Nordic countries. It's a way to pool resources, but also startups that are looking to enter some of the hottest tech ecosystems in the world. So there are locations in East Asia and 2 locations in the US. We have one in New York and one in Silicon Valley. And so the idea is to provide an advantage for those companies coming from the Nordic region into the US market, and specifically New York. We look to identify local partners that work in industries or sectors that complement those sectors and industries in the Nordics that are very strong. And so we're able to connect with the team at Stony Brook around clean energy, specifically clean energy companies that have a hardware solution or component. And we've had some good success with that. But we also focus on other areas such as prop tech and do a number of events and provide services, networking tools for the companies with a variety of different partners here in New York.
Thank you very much. And now I have a set of questions as I promised you. And my next question is, how would you compare and contrast your programs, soft landing programs, with other resources in your entrepreneurial innovation ecosystems that are available through to foreign companies, such as, for example, through government economic agencies, chambers of commerce, venture capital funds, and any other resources that are available? And how are you collaborating? Are you competing? So what is the relationship here?
I'll go. So we see ourselves as partner and as part of the ecosystem. So our goal is to bring to New York some of the best Israeli startups, very, very early stage. And, we are here to support them. So as being in Israel, being on the other side of the pond, I think when we're located here in New York and we see everything from our point of view. When you're in Tel Aviv, which is the big tech center in Israel, New York is still very, very far away. So being able to bring these companies here, even not necessarily physically, but being able to introduce them to the ecosystem, to the relevant partners, whether those are VCs or potential business partners, or the right mentors, or the next person who is going to help them to open the door, it's priceless. So first of all, we're very collaborative. We work with almost anyone who approaches us, and we're great supporters of innovation and startups overall. On top of that, our core is our students and faculty. So what we do with the startups when they are admitted to the program is we allocate them 1 or 2 teams of students dedicated to work on a specific challenge that we identified for the startup. Again, typically it's going to be something in the business realm related to research, content, etc. They're also allocated a professor that is dedicated to the startup with the team. So we're taking them, from identifying the problem, working with the students, working with the professor, introducing them to the ecosystem, and we're not competing. I see ourselves as we're a team player, and we're here for them because eventually, and some of our great success stories, those are early stage startups that started with us when they had an idea and a demo, and they ended up raising funding. We have one startup that just recently raised almost $1 million from the Bird Foundation. Now, if we contributed to that when they were very early stage, and then they're coming to the US and they're going to hire employees here, contributing to the larger economic development. On the way, our students benefit from working with real startups, hands-on learning experience. That's what we do, and that's who we are. So we're a very team player, and it's an ecosystem. And ecosystem requires team players. That's how we roll.
Thank you. And I forgot to mention the third option is saying I collaborating on.
By our general nature as an association, we're very collaborative. We have 115 members. Sometimes they're competitors with each other. Sometimes they're not. That doesn't matter. For us, in terms of like our soft landings program, it's a number of incubators coming together to do a short macro program to introduce companies to a larger swath of opportunities and the number of regions. So if you have a biotech company, for example, that's considering coming to the US, our message is come to New York. There's only a few innovation centers in the United States that's worth coming to. If you're a biotech company, come to New York, and we'll introduce you to a number of our members that have longer-term soft landing programs and other players. It doesn't have to be an incubator or an accelerator, but a number of opportunities that are here in New York. And what our program does is we don't have central staff that does this. It's our members that do it, that have soft landing programs. So there'll be 2 weeks virtual where they get to meet a lot of incubators that are providing mentorship in that 2-week virtual program. And then they have 2 weeks in person, 1 week here in New York City and 1 week in upstate New York. And they get moved around. So if you're a biotech firm, you might be at 6, 7, 8 incubators over the course of those 2 weeks, doing some customer discovery in that ecosystem. Our goal is you get to see the right, a potential right fit for you to do a longer term soft landings. So I think we were more of a feeder program than competition.
As an investor, probably I'm the odd kid in the block here. Founders and investors usually are at odds, especially during that initial negotiation part. Obviously, investors trying to get the value down and founders try to keep it up. And everybody's trying to get the best deal possible. And I remember when Dave Collard brought me to do this. This is my first job in my life. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've exited several companies. So he said, okay, I want you to do the exact same thing you're doing, but now for hundreds of companies. So one condition, I'm not torturing founders. I am working with them to make them as big as they can become. So the approach that we have is instead of destroying their confidence at the beginning, what we're thinking is let's bring them for the value that they truly have and give them the resources that enterprise has normally. So for example, I can interact with a Microsoft and IBM much easier than a startup. So I get to negotiate benefits, perks, support, mentorship that they need at the very beginning at almost no cost to them. And they do it in partnership with us. So that's the kind of perk that we're trying to build into our program to make them grow very, very fast. Another big thing for us is government. Government with us has been fantastic. We leverage treaties like AUKUS every day. We're looking for that kind of synergy in every single company that we work with and try to also find additional verticals. Like we have founders that comes with a commercial idea that has a defense purpose. So we have a very strong defense practice. So every single founder goes into that assessment, see how can we make United States more secure, the supply chain more stable. So we have a different, it's a very different approach. It's a soft landing program, but it's also an investment program. So you come here and you'll find the whole suite of services and direct access to capital. That's how we're very, very different.
Yep. I would say a collaboration is in our DNA. We started as a collaboration, and so it made sense for us to use that ethos in everything that we do. We're not the best at any specific vertical, so we look for partners who do have the depth of expertise and the networks in specific areas, because we want to provide the best for the companies when they come over here. And that's why we find really great partners like Stony Brook for the programs that we develop.
Now I'll go to the next question. How do you build relationship with international companies? How do foreign networks know that you exist? And how can regional stakeholders help facilitate like government agencies, facilitate relationships in foreign markets?
That's the key question, right? If we want to attract foreign startups to come to the US, how do we build these relationships? So like any relationship business, it's about people, right? People do business with people, not organizations. So it took us a couple of years to establish a very, very strong network and relationship in Israel. Again, yes, me being an Israeli kind of helped, but multiple trips to Israel, in-person meetings, and during COVID, we had this Zoom phase, which worked, but when we returned to back in person, you can completely see the shift in the interaction and the relationship you're building with the companies, the way they arrive here, the way they work with the students, and actually, how they're moving forward. So a lot of meetings, legwork, providing value, being there, being a resource for them, even if they don't join the Innovation Lab eventually, even if we can introduce them to one of the other partners in the ecosystem, really meeting people, being a resource. We do have, over the years, we've developed very strong relationships with several leading accelerators and incubators in Israel, which is where most of our pipeline is coming from. But word of mouth works. And today I'm receiving emails from founders who heard about us from our alumni startups and asking if they can join the program. So both feeder accelerators and the incubators, both word of mouth. We're running events in New York and in Israel whenever I'm there. So we're getting the exposure, and that's how it works for us.
For Bianis, we did a good deal of meetings with the foreign economic development offices here in New York City. And many of them have soft landing programs from their home country, and they're integrating them here into New York City. And so I've pulled members into that process to introduce them to a wider network. And I think that a lot of those offices now are looking to, hey, we understand New York City, we'd like to understand upstate. And so they see that as a value. They've also invited Bianis to a number of the conferences in there. We can only do so many a year, but it's been about 3 or 4 years. We've attended a number of conferences across the world that are, startup conferences. And again, there's a big, for ours, there's a big interest in that it's an exchange. So they'd like to see some of the US companies that are going to their home. And the rule is we're not looking to poach any companies. We're looking to help companies expand and create a footprint in the reciprocal nation.
We are super young as a program, and we have, it's been kind of surprising how much of a reception we've had globally. This program started in Australia. It was, okay, we'll start in Australia and we'll see how it goes. And all of a sudden, the inbox exploded. It was incredible. And it's because I think it's all word of mouth in reality, and we're very active in the ecosystem. So you will find me constantly on events like this. Yesterday, I had the 8 amazing companies that are participating in the bootcamp. They came to our offices and they meet our executives. And I think they got a flavor of what we're all about. It's not all talk. We're really part of the ecosystem. And every time I stand up on a panel, or I judge a pitch contest, or I mentor for US commercial service or some of the other incubators I work with, I'm constantly meeting founders. I'm part of that conversation. So I think there's a word of mouth that started about scale facilitation and Access New York that has worked really, really well for us.
We've traditionally relied very heavily on the trade promotion organizations from each of the Nordic countries who are represented on our board of directors. And then to supplement that, we've developed relationships with individual staff members on the ground within those countries, and then built networks around the specific programs that we have, like PropTech and clean energy, with incubators and accelerators that work with the companies in those specific areas. Where we've seen us getting traction and success is developing the partnerships or having government support promotion of our activities and what we do, and act as champions for what we're trying to do in terms of helping the companies abroad. And then locally, when the state government, local governments, federal government support programs like the ones that we're discussing today at this event, that actually makes a really big difference because startups and even scale-ups are taking huge risk. They're risky companies coming in, and soft landing is not something that is necessarily easy to do, and that's why it takes a huge amount of support and effort to help these companies succeed and enter a highly competitive market like the US.
Thank you very much. Very happy with your answers. We have similar experiences with soft landing New York. Now, my next question, what are some of the challenges that foreign companies engaged in your programs face when they're coming to access your US markets?
Okay, I would go with the first one, understanding the American market. Again, companies that are located in Israel or basically in any other place in the world, they see things from their perspective. And the reality is, and even when it comes to technology and the problem that they're solving, and so when they decide that they develop this amazing technology and they want to scale and they want to enter the American market, the first thing that they kind of they face is that, well, how does this problem that we're solving or that we think we're solving looks like in the US? What are the other solutions and where do we fit? And so I would say that the first challenge that the international startups, especially again, early stage, and we're working with early stage startups, is really understanding the landscape in the States, starting with problem validation. How does it look like here? Then definitely the entire navigating the business environment, which is very, very different from where they're coming from. And I will add to that some cultural differences that, as part of my program, we put a lot of emphasis on kind of helping them to realize and bridge some of the cultural differences between Israel and the United States. But I would say that these are the core that we see.
I think probably similarly, one, product market fit. So if somebody has a product in their home country and they're coming here, there could be regulatory issues that don't make it, something that's going to sell. Or, and I had this example where oftentimes software that work for hospitals that works in Europe does not work here because it's a completely different billing system and different incentives. So that's one. And then the actual sales process, because of cultural differences, being able to calibrate, these are pilot customers they're going after. It's their first few customers to get some experience under their belt, and determining how hard to sell or not being too soft of a sell. That takes a good 10, 15, 20 meetings.
Hey, Mark, you stole my answer.
Oh.
Yeah, compliance. Compliance is a big one, especially if you're in the cybersecurity space or military or defense space. You have to, the IP sharing, it's complex when you're trying to get, two universities to work together and solving a problem. It's very difficult. Like if you start in Australia, bring the technology to the United States, how you send it back. There is little details about that. And there's, AUKUS is helping, but it's not all there. So some of these technologies require additional levels of support when it comes to compliance. And then the commercial model. We've seen that, especially when it comes to medical, digital, digital health space solutions, that they are used to having a single payer, let's say in Australia. How you translate that here? Mm-hmm. Or biotech or devices is the same thing. You have to take a model that works very well in one place, and here it's just, you cannot find a way of selling it. It can be fantastic. So those are the two hardest. Everything else is solvable, but those are the biggest barriers.
Yeah, and to echo what the other panelists have said, it's checking the assumptions of a lot of the founders that come over here who think that, especially if this is their first time, they have the cultural understanding of the country based on pop culture or media that they might have consumed, or their experiences with Americans, not understanding the complexity of the US market, depending on the industry, the fact that we have 50 states with their own laws and regulations. So checking those assumptions is key. just want to get off the plane and start meeting with investors right away. And there are a few steps before then usually.
Claudia, now my last question. What does success look like for your program? And how do you measure success? Any success story of a client that has come to your program?
Yeah, how do we measure success? That's a big one. Working with very early stage startups, according to the stats, depending who is counting, 90-95% of them failing. Success is kind of hard to define. Having said that, we do look at down the line, and now we have a couple of we're running the program for a few years, so we have several companies that ended up raising their seed or pre-seed rounds, which is one success. The other is them actually moving to the US and opening offices here and hiring local employees. So job creation, we look at that. So that's on the startup side. On the student side, because we have students participating in the program, we also look at how many of our students that participated in the innovation lab are going out and then starting their own businesses and hiring employees, because it adds to the general economic development and job creation. So we look at it from two perspectives. One, from the startup, and to what extent we were able to move them from point A to point B and help them to get to the next step and come here and hopefully hire people and start selling. And the other side is students, how many of them, based on their experience in the innovation lab after graduations, are moving forward not only to work for the big 4 or 5, or like in today's environment, like more and more of them are choosing the entrepreneurial pathway. So how many of them are actually opening their own businesses and hiring people? So again, economic development, job creation, that's what we're looking at.
I think it's going to be very similar for all of us. For us, there's direct and indirect success. So for us, success is companies being in the right incubator for them and in the right environment for them, and our members having companies coming in from international. The indirect success is the longer term soft landings programs, and seeing the companies that we help place into soft landing programs flourish, leave an incubator, get space, hire employees.
We have, obviously, as investors, obviously we're looking for the success of our companies and accelerated success of our companies. Actually, we're not only looking for great founders, like I said, and great technologies, we're looking to be able to partner with them and help them grow very fast. So a lot of growth is part of our success, but also there is the success of our partners. Since we're working very, very closely with government and academia, we set up to accomplish very specific KPIs for every single one of the projects that we set together. So we are very, very focused on fulfilling our responsibilities to our partners as well.
I mean, obviously everybody wants every company that enters their program to be wildly successful and be a unicorn factory, but the numbers are a little bit different. Our core function is providing soft landing platform, which is basically to accelerate getting from point A to point B in a way that saves time and money. And so I think that's a really important way to look at success. If your end journey is that you need to go back to the drawing board with your product market fit, and we've been able to save you $100,000 in doing that, that's a success metric. And that helps the viability of the company in the long term. So I think, we've heard these are all really great points in terms of success, but I think that's another one that sometimes isn't talked about a lot.
Thank you very much to all our panelists, and now I would like to open the floor for questions.
Incubator. What have your observations been about Denmark, with the particular regions of Denmark, programs they're doing here in the US? Do you have any observations about that? Aalborg or Copenhagen or individual?
I don't have any specific observations about particular regions. We've seen a lot of Danish companies come through, Danish industry organizations, and I think there's a lot of activity going on. Obviously, Copenhagen being the largest city attracts the most attention. We've got Tech Barbecue, for example. But it's also a relatively small country, so we can't get too granular without maybe sort of missing some of our broader objectives.
I guess to the whole panel, but maybe you could
Please
answer first.
introduce yourself
sure.
first. And
John
then-
Schneiderwin, Suffolk County. I'm the Chief Business Development Innovation Officer for Suffolk County here in New York, right out on Long Island. So with that, Suffolk County right now is kind of positioning itself as an epicenter for the offshore wind industry. And a lot of the technology and advancement in that industry has come through partnerships with the Nordic regions. Is there any assistance that you provide companies, let's say, in that area that are looking to partner with small, medium-sized businesses here in more of like a joint venture space to help, enter those particular industries like the offshore wind industry and be successful here in New York?
Yeah. This is a very specific question. I'll try to be very brief. With offshore wind specifically, the Nordic countries are not collaborating as a whole because there is a lot of competition between them. I believe Denmark and Norway are leading in that area. In terms of support, down the supply chain, or in terms of supporting offshore wind specifically with maintenance and whatnot, the Nordic Spark program is set up to catch a lot of those companies and help facilitate the entry into the U.S. market to those.
So for any other panelists, as far as, because I could give you an example. So we have a concrete manufacturer that's on Long Island, and they, through actually a recent IPF that was not this year, but the past year, had been able to connect with a company in the UK who already has adopted technology that could easily help them transition into the offshore wind industry, providing concrete mattresses for the offshore wind infrastructure. That company in the UK was then able to, create a joint venture, partner with this small business on Long Island, and now help that business transition into the offshore wind supply chain. That creates jobs. It creates more economic activity for the region. From a soft landing perspective, is there any effort to help with kind of guiding those companies to help those types of partnerships?
Yeah, we see more and more companies coming into that space. Actually, we just were in a couple of calls a couple of weeks ago, specifically for offshore wind, and obviously with our recent acquisition of Britishvolt, which provides a connectivity to the North Sea and Norway, obviously. It opens a lot of opportunities. So it is in our best economic interest to get involved in that kind of initiative, not specifically in New York at this point, but we're in the process of growing, especially in the battery and energy space. So it's not something that would be out of our area of interest.
Excellent.
Okay, one more. Okay.
Hi.
Question.
All right.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Ollie from Hub Controls. I'm interested in how you deal with. So we were talking about product market fit and companies coming into the US and thinking about what way the US is. But there are some markets that are not ready or fully baked yet, like the clean energy market, right? So how do you handle the the moving landscape of something like the clean energy space? Or any other space that's moving like that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. One of the ways that we address that is by issuing a clean energy report on New York State specifically. It's a very basic primer, but it sort of detailed a lot of the major clean energy programs, a lot of the universities involved with clean energy ecosystem here in the state, and then an overview of what the public sector support looks like. Obviously, that's going to change over the next few years, but it was important in terms of anchoring for those who may not understand what the opportunity looks like in this moment for the companies coming over and get them started and help bring them up to speed, and so that they could, have more advanced conversations.
Okay, we were kind of talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
But for the interest of the people who wasn't present, we we try to approach this kind of scenario by trying to align in the interests of regulators and participants, because you are in a very well established, in the energy space, very well established players. So it's all about getting everybody aligned with a plan that works, because it's unavoidable. The model is going to change. It's a matter of time. It's who jumps first, who becomes the standard, and who provides the service. So whenever we look at an opportunity like this, a lot of the conversations that happens before an investment is obviously with the different players and how we would align everybody's business model to fit in.
Thank you very much. Unless there is any urgent. I was just looking at the clock. No, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say that, I look at this as almost like a resolution thing. The clarity of a specific issue, when you have to be really incisive on it, it's a corporate innovation challenge saying, we know there's an issue on this. Let's do a business plan competition. Let's see what the solutions. Let's see, 3 or 4 companies. But at a very macro level, wind was brought up. 132 gigawatts of wind are going into the waters, in New England, but New York. It's a $180 billion supply chain. We all know we don't have it, and a lot of it is in the Nordic area. So, universities like Binghamton that have soft landing programs like this, they're connected through NISTAR, which funds a lot of incubation here in New York. A lot of other incubators in our network are funded by NYSERDA. NYSERDA kind of has the directive to find these solutions. So when we see a company that has a solution that looks like it's solving the problem we've heard of, that's where we bring them. But it's not a very specific, I'm not going to say that we don't know exactly what your solution is for a specific problem that a specific wind company is going to have. So,
Maria, do you have anything to say?
The wind tech is not an Israeli kind of clean energy is, but we're out of the scope. I would say in general, many industries are shifting, and what we're trying to do is speak directly to the customers. So as bring the companies to speak to their potential customers and better understand their needs. When shifts are happening, they're happening, you're going to hear about them if you're going to be speaking directly to the market. I think one of the biggest challenges is not speaking to the market and operating under assumptions and hypotheses that you didn't have a chance to validate.
Thank you. Any pressing question from the audience? If not, I'm very happy to thank our panelists. This was an amazing